Hi again, everybody. Welcome to ENMU's IS 301 Information Systems for Managers. I'm here breaking all the rules of how you're supposed to do things, upsetting everybody, but I'm getting through to you, aren't I? Which is exactly what this is all about. The more obnoxious, mean, I can be, that means I'm getting through to you. There's a shell around all of us, and we have to dig our way through that shell to get something in there. Very interesting way of doing things, but that's okay because that's what we're supposed to be doing here. If you don't like the process, tough. All right, welcome to Faking Big. Let me get over here and do this cute little guy. Come on. Hello. There it is. All right. I'm older than a lot of you. And that's not to say that I'm better or anything like that. I've just been around a bit, so I have some more information to draw from. One thing is I know a lot about the beginnings of the internet. I wasn't like a key player or anything, but I got into computers before the internet, and so I was there in the wild and woolly days as one of those users before it was even graphical. Whew, man, can you imagine that? Can you imagine a World Wide Web where it's just all just text and nothing else, text and links? I was there. Ugh. Anyway, yeah, it was definitely when graphics started coming in and cascading style sheets. Oh my gosh, that's when the magic really started happening. Let's talk about looking big, using technology to look bigger than you are. Almost every company that's really a prominent internet company now, Google, Amazon, you can name some others, I suppose. Those are the ones that immediately come to mind. Really started out as shoestring operations. And it worked because back in those days, all the websites kind of behaved the same and looked the same. And that meant that just a guy operating not much of a business at all out of his garage could put up a website that looked just as engaging, professional, at least for the time, as the big boys. You know, what now we call brick and mortar stores, which strangely enough, people don't, it doesn't matter. Anyway, you could make it look exactly the same. There wasn't a lot of tools. You couldn't do a lot of really amazing stuff. You had pictures, you had text, you had forms, and you used those to carry on your business. Whether you were a big, huge company like, let's talk about a company that's dying now that used to be huge. J.C. Penney. Let's think about that one for a minute. You would be able to have the same presence on the internet, although there wasn't a ton of people on the internet, but it was coming. As you could have the same kind of presence at J.C. Penney because they had the same tools that weren't very well developed, and we couldn't really put out really amazing stuff back then. So you could look exactly the same, and you could compete in the web sphere, which was just starting to heat up and get really cool, and really everybody was saying, wow, there might be a market here. I know nowadays you go, are you insane? Of course there's a market there. And you go, back then, we didn't know that. It was all just a bunch of crazy people saying, oh, wow. That was what the first tech bubble was, the dot-com bubble back in 1999. Tons of money was pouring into this, and there still wasn't really the infrastructure, and there wasn't enough people using the internet to really justify all that money. So that's why that little bubble burst, and a whole lot of companies went, blah, because they had tons of money, but they couldn't justify it. Now, are we going to have another tech bubble? I guess, maybe, but probably not the same way as that one was, which was the great hope of the internet wasn't fulfilled by reality. Now we've got the reality. The companies that survive the tech bubble period, they're right at the turn of the millennium. Google and Amazon are great examples. They weathered that, and when the internet really became just a commodity and everybody either had it or had to start getting it whether they liked it or not, it was amazing. So those were the wild and woolly days. And you still have those days kind of today. But I think we're going to talk about that in the next video in this wonderful little series, because I'm not going to be able to talk about this whole thing in just one video, and I'm thinking that we need to stop that. Except to say I've got 4 more minutes, so let's talk a little bit about sweat equity. If you don't know what sweat equity is, it is putting labor, your own labor, your own time, your own resources into a business rather than investment, money. You usually do this when you don't have a lot of money, but you have a lot of energy. A lot of businesses start out this way, about saying, I can't afford rent, I can't afford utilities, so I run it out of my garage. That is a form of sweat equity. You're just doing it with what you have available to you and what you can afford at the time. And like Amazon and Google, they both started out that way, at least in a digital sort of fashion. These concepts still hold true, but they have morphed a bit, Most people don't do their own web design particularly, because in the modern way of doing things, that doesn't work unless that's your marketing, your shtick. It is to be kind of folksy. You can do that a bit, but a whole lot of people, we all know how it works. It's got to look cool. It's got to look modern. It's got to look, if you go out to, I don't know. If you go out to any random website these days, you'll notice that they all have the same kind of look and the same kind of feel. And that kind of goes back to the framework that a lot of these places have gotten into using. WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, these. And you can almost say, I know what they're using. And you can almost say, I know if they've got capacity, if they've got money backing them, they will look more customized. If they're just kind of a shoestring operation, not that I'm going to shoot those down, it's not going to have. It's going to look what's the term? Generic. That's what really ends up happening. Back in the old days where you first started with HTML and frames, all the websites, you couldn't tell the difference between a big company and a little company. Now it's a little more apparent if you're trying to do it yourself. Just because now there's this built up big thing about you have a huge technology department if you're a big company, and you can self-make your own cool stuff, where otherwise you just have to take what you can find that you can get for cheap. And we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about hosted infrastructure and things like that. So hang on.